issue of idolatry should matter to people who claim to believe in the Abrahamic God, and this would be Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Obviously, a very high percentage of them are hypocrites. We already know that half of Jewry are secular Jews, meaning that they do not keep the Sabbath, and this means that if the overwhelming majority of Jews were taking their religion seriously, they would have excommunicated these Sabbath breakers. And if they did keep a registry of Jews, they would have struck off these Jews who do not observe the Sabbath. That is the only way of excommunicating Jews who are, in fact, heretical, non-observant, and very likely to commit Hilul Hashem, which means desecrating the name of God. Why don't Jews do this? Perhaps they haven't my neat organizational mind, or they just can't be bothered, or they think that saying there are Jews in existence who are heretical under the laws of the Torah be executed is somehow better than saying there are only very few Jews around. So it seems that Jewry as a whole have no settled opinion about whether quality is better than sheer numbers. Frankly, I don't see the point of saying this is my religious group, but most of my religious groups do not, in fact, practice this religion. Because the moment you say that, you are showing that nobody, including the members of your religious group, take your religion seriously. So you might as well, you are, in fact, admitting weakness, confusion, and identifying yourself as a member of a group that doesn't follow its own rules. Why would you do that? So I suppose Jews who don't want to talk about that are in some way using silence to create a better impression than actually admitting the weakness and divisions of Judaism, of Jewry. But at some stage, surely Jews should acknowledge, particularly those who believe in God, that if half or more than half of your religious group do not follow your religion, what kind of a religion are you? And if God exists, what is he likely to do to people who openly disobey his laws? And it's not like God hasn't said anything about it. It's all very clearly stated in chapter 28 of the book of Deuteronomy. So obviously, Jews no longer take God's commandments seriously. So this is a bad sign for them, because if God exists, punishment must surely follow. As for Christians, they are the most powerful religious group and the biggest religious group in the world, but they are on their way down because their numbers are declining. And we're not really sure exactly how many of them there are, because there is a question mark over how Christians are defined, classified, and we already suspect that the most powerful churches in the world do not really keep a proper register of confirmed Christians. We can ignore the Orthodox Church because what they have is a ceremony called chrismation. So it's all done at birth, meaning that once you've been dunked in the baptismal font of your Orthodox Church, you can't really get out of it. You are a full Christian, and it's only when you convert to another religion that you can be said to renounce the religion of your parents. But Catholics and Anglicans have this confirmation ceremony, and obviously only those who have been baptized and confirmed can properly call themselves Christian. But even if these numbers were available, their numbers would be abysmally low. Were you to find them, you would not find them to be believing Christians. I have heard that it is really refugees and economic migrants who convert to Anglicanism in order to make themselves more acceptable to their host society. So really, you can't take anything Christians say seriously because they have no explanation for worshipping a man, which is idolatry. And the best they can do is to say that it is not idolatry to worship Jesus if he is indeed God, and make damn sure that they run out of the room before you can ask the next question, which is, how is Jesus God? So obviously, humanity is in deep trouble if Christians on their third global empire are allowed to maintain their empire without correcting themselves. Who will be to blame for this state of affairs? It would be actually Jews and Muslims. If you talk to Christians, they obviously make no sense, and they are in difficulties acknowledging that they have been lied to since the Edict of Thessalonica in 380. So it's obviously a big thing for them to acknowledge the failure of Christianity, failing to prevent the decline and fall of Rome, failing to prevent the extinction of absolute monarchies in 1918. It's impossible to explain these things to them because you as an individual, however precise you are, how clear your language is, you are unable to overturn the desire in these Christians and post-Christians to immediately forget what you're saying and tell you it doesn't matter and say nobody believes in this shit anyway and it's only a cultural affiliation. So who can be held responsible for the state of affairs where the biggest religious group of the Abrahamic religions is openly idolatrous and blasphemous, being Christians, but they have been allowed to acquire three global empires. And what of how God, if he exists, might regard Jewry, who are mostly guilty of disobedience. But what even of the observant Jews? They don't say anything about the heretical Jews. They just keep quiet about them. This leads me to think that there are quite a lot of skeletons these in the cupboards of these Abrahamic religions that need to be examined. Now, the Muslims, they are the second biggest group. And so you might expect them to do something about it. But sadly, they do not seem to understand very simple arguments about monarchy and republic and chapter 18, verse 4 of the Quran that commands them to admonish those who claim that God has begotten the Son. They do not appear to be able to discuss the difference between monarchy and republic. They do not appear to be engaging on any subject at all. So it could well be said that they are just as morally corrupt and intellectually dishonest as these Christians who continue to worship an executed blasphemer. But I suppose reasonable people capable of understanding my arguments, who do not immediately forget what I've just said, um, are capable of imagining what God might feel about Jews, Christians, and Muslims if he exists, and what he has in store for them. So in the West, we know that Trump must be suffering from dementia, so are the Eurotrash, European national leaders, and no one is saying or doing anything. There's no point expecting Christians to correct themselves because those who aren't or who are on social media are demented, Islamophobic, uh, bent on showing how much they hate Islam and Muslims. I even know one who actually was so keen to show off his Islamophobia that to my question to him, which goes, what religion would you choose for your next life if, after having entered your lifetime in this life, gone on to meet your Maker and discovered that he's not Jesus, what would be the religion you would choose for your next life if you wanted to get to heaven ASAP? I asked him that question. What would you, a Catholic, do if you had the option of choosing a different religion in your next life when you discover, after you are dead in the afterlife, that God is not, in fact, Jesus? And do you know what he said to me? He said he would choose Christianity again. That's what he actually said. So basically, he's saying he would rather die and go to hell twice than to acknowledge that Christianity is idolatry and blasphemy. And he is repeatedly platformed by Spaces hosts who are very happy to platform National Socialists and all kinds of low status beliefs. I have tried to attract the attention of this Islamophobe, but obviously he is making a policy of non-engagement with me. I have said I would be happy to be his guest, and he may assemble as many Islamophobes that he wants to throw rocks at me, metaphorically, of course, when I appear on his space. But I don't think I will be hearing from him. These Islamophobes like remaining in their echo chamber, and they are also anti Semites. There's a kind of pattern to their thinking. But the answer to my question is clear. If God exists, then obviously those who claim to believe in him should care that Christianity is idolatry. Because Christians have been force fed their nonsense by their absolute monarchs and threatened with being burnt at the stake if they question the Trinity, we can maybe give them a little space and say they're not quite right in the head. They are still suffering from some kind of PTSD from being forced to believe in all that nonsense. But really, it's these Jews and these Muslims. Why don't they tell these Christians, even when in America, in the free West, they are supposed to enjoy free speech? Why don't they? Is it because they don't believe either and think it's nonsense anyway, and that it's too cringe to even pretend to believe? So I see somebody called Jesus is my Lord. For some reason, he can't bring himself to spell Islam correctly. But Christians who worship an executed blasphemer are in no position to be the moral arbiters of our time, are they? Since they believe in nonsense and worship a blasphemer as the co-equal of the Abrahamic God who created the universe, we can suppose them to be suffering from a learning disability or insanity or some psychological problem. And of course, it is really Jews and Muslims who are capable of dislodging this satanic and evil ideology, which now goes around promoting the policies of Sodom and Gomorrah. We can only suppose that most Jews and Muslims are cowards and hypocrites who only pretend to believe in God. They're happy to enjoy the group benefits, but they won't be saying boo to the goose of their Christian overlords. And this is really their disgrace. If they did believe in God, then you would have thought they might open their mouths and ask a few questions, but they never do. Doubt doubtless intimidated by their Christian overlords, and this means they are guilty of hidden idolatry and therefore hypocrisy. And the Quran conveniently says that hypocrites go to hell. And I guess they don't care because they don't believe in any of that shit, do they? No, they don't. So all these people claiming to be Jews, Christians, and Muslims are, in fact, hypocrites who don't give a damn about idolatry and blasphemy that are clearly stated in the first and second commandments and in the first and second no-hide laws. So I guess they are all going to hell. And since they don't really believe in God, they cannot be moved into any kind of action at all. So, woe is the world that has such an overwhelming majority of hypocrites in it, pretending to be Jews, Christians, and Muslims. We therefore know that the Quran is the best available guide to humanity because it tells us exactly what is going to happen to liars, cowards who are hypocrites pretending to believe in God. Thank you all for your attention.